Peel back the surface of conservative media right now, and you will find something far more intense than a simple disagreement. What you are witnessing is not gossip. It is not random drama. It is a battle over power, legacy, influence, and control. And at the center of it are two women whose clash has fractured audiences across the political right.
Seeing Charlie in an elevator, everything about Charlie is adding up. I cannot get a single person to confirm that they saw Erika, who's apparently out and about. I then thought, wouldn't it make sense? She screams in the middle of a parking lot. She screams in the middle of a doctor's office. Everybody kind of knows where they were when Charlie got shot.
Candace Owens and Erika Kirk. But here is what most coverage keeps getting wrong. This is not just about hurt feelings. It is not just about personality conflict. And it is definitely not just about mean tweets. What people really want to know is this. What exactly is Candace accusing Erika of? Is she implying a political takeover? Does she believe Erika was positioned to inherit power? Why does she think something about the transition at Turning Point USA does not sit right? Let us break it down clearly, directly, and without softening the edges. To understand the tension, you have to go back to the moment everything changed. The assassination of Charlie Kirk. When Charlie was killed during a speaking event.
Conservative political activist Charlie Kirk is dead after being shot at a rally.
Engaging college and high school students, and he was doing just that at that university when he was shot and killed earlier today. He leaves behind.
The shock was immediate. He was not just another political activist. He was the founder of one of the most influential youth conservative organizations in America. His brand was intertwined with the organization's identity. His voice was its engine. His personality drove its reach. And then suddenly he was gone. In moments like that, institutions face chaos. Leadership vacuums can destroy movements. Donors panic. Staff scramble. Rivals circle. But what happened next is where Candace Owens' suspicion begins. Within days, Erika Kirk stepped forward as the new CEO. The messaging was clean. The board appeared unified. Major donors signaled support. Media allies amplified stability. The organization projected calm continuity. To many observers, that looked responsible. To Candace, it looked prepared. And this is the core of what she is implying. Candace is not publicly accusing Erika of orchestrating violence. She has not made a direct legal allegation about involvement in Charlie's death.
The world that Charlie and I live in is very toxic at times.
That is important to state clearly. What she is questioning is the speed and smoothness of the power transition. She has repeatedly asked variations of the same question. How was everyone so ready? According to Candace, leadership transitions in major political organizations do not just happen overnight unless groundwork has already been laid. She has suggested that Erika appeared institutionally positioned to assume control long before tragedy struck, and this is where the word "planted" started circulating among her supporters. Candace does not always use that exact term outright. Instead, she asks pointed questions. She notes how quickly authority consolidated. She emphasizes how swiftly dissent disappeared. She highlights how donors did not hesitate. Her implication is that Erika was not an emergency replacement. She was the preferred successor. Why does that matter? Because Candace believes she was sidelined. Before Charlie's death, Candace was one of his most visible allies in conservative media. Their audiences overlapped heavily. They appeared together publicly. They amplified each other's causes. Many supporters assumed that if anything ever happened to Charlie, figures like Candace would naturally have significant influence within the movement's next chapter. But that is not what happened. Instead, the board backed Erika decisively. Candace has suggested that powerful donors favored a more institutionally controlled leader, rather than a strong independent media personality like herself. In her framing, this was not random, it was strategic. She implies that donors and board members wanted stability over volatility, predictability over confrontation, structure over disruption. And to Candace, that signals something deeper than a grieving widow stepping up. It signals institutional preference. She has pointed to the speed at which internal messaging aligned. According to her, individuals who questioned decisions after Charlie's death were either marginalized or told it was inappropriate to challenge leadership during a period of mourning. Candace frames this as a grief shield. In her view, criticism became taboo. scrutiny was labeled insensitive, and that environment allowed leadership consolidation without serious pushback. Now pause for a second. Imagine you are watching this unfold from the outside. A founder dies, his spouse becomes CEO. Donors immediately align, the board unifies. Public messaging is tightly coordinated. Is that responsible for crisis management? Or does it look like succession planning that was quietly anticipated? That is the line Candace keeps walking. She has also questioned Erika's prior operational role. Before Charlie's death, Erika was not publicly branded as the heir apparent. There was no large public campaign introducing her as future leadership, no obvious grooming process presented to supporters. Yet within days, she was in full command. Candace asks, why was there no visible succession transparency beforehand? Her critics say she is exploiting tragedy. Her supporters say she is exposing uncomfortable questions. And then there is the ideological angle. Candace believes Turning Point shifted in tone after Charlie's death. She suggests the organization became more cautious, more aligned with institutional conservatism, less combative in certain areas. She frames this not as natural evolution, but as intentional recalibration. In her narrative, the movement's edge softened.
Where he was to tell his story, but he also had to include the part where he claims that he saw Erika Kirk the night before, also on Fort Huachuca at Candlewood Inn and Suites, okay?
And she implies that this shift aligns more with donor preferences than grassroots energy. That accusation hits hard because it touches on a long-running tension inside conservative politics: populist fire versus institutional structure. Candace positions herself as the populist voice. By contrast, she paints Erika as the institutional choice. Again, notice the pattern. She is not making a criminal accusation. She is making a power accusation. She has hinted that certain board relationships and donor alliances predated Charlie's death in ways that made Erika a comfortable option. She asks whether conversations about contingency planning were happening quietly. There is no publicly presented document proving this. But in political media, suggestion is powerful. And here is where the emotional undercurrent intensifies. Candace has openly expressed feeling betrayed. She implies that she expected inclusion in key conversations after Charlie's death. She suggests she was kept at a distance during major decisions. She questions why someone who shared so much ideological alignment with Charlie would be excluded from shaping the next phase. To her supporters, that exclusion looks suspicious. To her critics, it looks like ego. But either way, it fuels engagement. Then came the most controversial escalation, her investigative series framing Erika's life and rise under a dramatic lens. The trailer ignited outrage. Critics accused Candace of turning a widow into a target. Fellow conservative commentators publicly condemned her tone. Some called it cruel, others called it reckless, but Candace defended it as accountability journalism. She argues that powerful figures do not become immune from scrutiny because they are grieving. In her view, leadership demands transparency, and here is the part that many viewers quietly wonder about but rarely say out loud. Is Candace implying that Charlie's death conveniently benefited certain power structures? She has used phrases like, "who benefits," and "too clean," when discussing the investigation's conclusion. She questions security lapses and event planning details, but she has stopped short of direct accusation. Legally, that line matters. Narratively, it still plants doubt. The viral rumor that Erika was planted to overtake Turning Point does not originate from a direct statement of orchestration. It grows from the accumulation of suspicion, the speed, the alignment, the donor support, the ideological shift, the exclusion of other strong personalities, the rapid authority consolidation. Put together, Candace frames it as more than coincidence. Now step back and look at the stakes. Turning Point USA is not a small local group. It is a national powerhouse with massive fundraising, campus influence, and media reach. Whoever controls it controls messaging pipelines to millions of young voters. Succession in such an organization is not symbolic. It is strategic. Candace's argument, at its core, is that this succession was too seamless to be purely reactive. Her critics argue that organizations must move fast in crisis to survive. Her supporters argue that real transparency should not fear questions. And this is where the story becomes bigger than either woman. This is about how political empires transition after charismatic founders die. History shows that movements often fracture in these moments. Power struggles emerge, alliances shift, narratives compete. Candace is fighting for narrative influence. Erika is defending institutional legitimacy. One is asking questions loudly. The other is projecting stability quietly. The audience is split. Some believe Candace is crossing moral lines by scrutinizing a widow during grief. Others believe no one should be above examination, especially when leading a major political force. And that tension is why this conflict refuses to fade. Because underneath the headlines is a raw question about modern politics. Does loyalty to a founder entitle you to influence after their death? Or does formal structure determine succession? Candace seems to believe ideological proximity and audience alignment should have granted her more standing. The board believed continuity through family leadership was safer. That clash of expectations turned into suspicion. Suspicion turned into accusation. Accusation turned into media warfare. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. There is no public evidence proving a pre-planned takeover. There is also no public transparency fully detailing internal contingency conversations before Charlie's death. In the absence of complete information, narrative fills the void. Candace fills it with skepticism. Erika fills it with composure. And viewers choose which story feels more believable. That is why this has exploded beyond personal drama. It touches the fault line between populist influence and institutional control. It forces supporters to decide what they value more, stability or confrontation. And it raises a final, powerful question. When leaders fall, who inherits the movement, the family, the donors, or the loudest ideological ally? Candace is arguing it should not be automatic. Erika is asserting that legitimacy does not require public approval from rivals. As this continues to unfold, reputations hang in the balance. If Candace's suspicions gain traction, the legitimacy of the transition could be permanently questioned. If they collapse under scrutiny, her credibility could take a serious hit. Either way, this is not just a feud. It is a test of how modern political movements handle power, grief and succession under the glare of digital media. And the outcome will say just as much about the audience consuming this story as it does about the two women at its center. Because in the end, influence belongs to whoever people choose to believe.